Hello and welcome to Deconstructing the Construct, episode 62. This is part 3 of a series that began with episode 60. So if you haven't seen 60 and 61, please go back and do that before watching this one so you have complete context. Hopefully what was described in episode 60 and 61 makes some sense for you and gives some context for perhaps your own personal experience. But we are going to start with physical. How this has played out and been experienced for us physically. Because we've got a couple of things going on. We've got an organic, natural merge with a greater part of ourselves. And then we've got the interference of that. We've identified the vagus nervous system as what we believe to be the seat of the virus in our physical bodies, but also in the energetic bodies. As we're going through this merge with home, it is like going through a filtering system of finer and finer filters, purging us of our programs and what I just broadly call the virus in all its forms. Even emotional processing happens via the vagal nerve between the heart, the brain, and the gut. If you choose to do some research on the vagus nervous system, I think you'll find that most of your symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, will relate to this nervous system. So this filtering purge has, as we know, as most of us have experienced over the last year, resulted in the dizziness, nausea, mucus purging. We've also more recently, and this is where I believe the interference has come in, the headaches have amped up. The nausea can also come across as more like a motion sickness, as you're being pulled one way and then the other. There's also been many people complaining that they look like they've aged 20 years in the last 12 months. And yet it doesn't seem to correspond with how they feel on the inside. On the inside they feel better, younger, like there's more space inside, and yet that's not being reflected on the outside. Current theory is the more of our consciousness that is merging with home, the less there is here to keep this avatar running, feeding it, sustaining it. There's just enough to keep things running. The other sensation that's quite unusual is this feeling of being pulled out of your body. It can sometimes just be in the head, but it can also be in the torso, where you're pulling towards or out in a particular direction and then snap back. And that, again, I think is part of the trying to transition to home, but being snapped back in. That has stopped since that pocket realm was deleted. And now what's happening is more of an overall vibration, a smooth humming, anything from a gentle, fine hum to quite an intense vibration, but it seems to emanate from the solar plexus right throughout the body, or it's coming from either the top or like the head or the feet and running up or down. But it's a very rhythmic vibration. We also do seem to be once again, over the last week or so, going back into that process of filtering our memories, now that we're back on track. And that's playing out in a number of ways. Being very emotional, teary. The dream state is getting interesting. There's lots of dreams that are sort of set in historical settings or in galactic type settings or whatever, and they're not really happening in real time. They are memories. We appear to be processing right now the entire construct itself, the history of the construct, the history of the collective in the construct. Some of them are our memories of our lifetimes here, some of them aren't. But it's about processing, filtering all of the files, all of the memories, and deciding what needs to be kept and what doesn't. So if you have some outrageous dream that feels really real, but it's not set right here and now, that may be what you're doing. It's not an experience that you're having right now. It's not happening in another parallel reality or on another timeline. It's just a review of memories of your time in here. So in a nutshell, we are in the process of merging with the greater part of ourselves. We are in the process of transferring our consciousness home and into our home bodies. And that does involve a few things. It's a very emotional time. It can be a very painful time. Because what we're also doing is becoming more like our home self, which means also being more empathic and telepathic and more connected to the collective. From what I understand from my own experiences, from what I've been told by home, from other people's experiences that they've shared with me, we are naturally connected and empathic with each other. And just like in Star Wars, when the planet gets blown up and it is felt that there was a disturbance in the force and that 1,000,000 lights just went out, or whatever the number is. We feel each other. We feel each other's joy and each other's pain. So the more online we become, the more connected we become with our home version, with our home environment, the more empathic and telepathic we become. And that can be really hard. Discernment really is key moving forward as to what's yours, what's somebody else's that you're picking up on, what's the collectives that you're picking up on, what is a memory, what is an insight, what is prophetic. It's going to get trickier and trickier at the moment. But whatever pain does come up, it's so important to let it flow, to release it in a constructive, loving way, obviously. Try and stay in your heart with it and just let the pain flow. Otherwise, you're only going to create blocks within yourself and hamper your own progress. Another thing that has been noted is the sheer number of people who are leaving, aka dying. And if you are somebody who has lost someone close, if you're not ready to hear what I'm about to say, because I'm not sure how it's going to be received, then you might want to skip the next few minutes. So it does come with a warning. But it's been noted for about 3 months now that people are leaving in very large numbers. And I am hearing from people who work within the hospital system, in aged care, in emergency, that the number of deaths has potentially escalated up to 300% just in the last 3 months. And we're not being told. Now, it seems like there is a number of reasons for that. One is, I do believe that people have gone home ahead of schedule by choice in order to help from the home end because of this pocket realm attempt at a reset. The second and related reason is because, as I said in the previous two, the virus has been agitated and amped up wherever it exists. And because it's as if the bots themselves were literally programmed to start taking people out. We saw people leaving in themes. For a couple of weeks there was the most extraordinary number of reports of head-on collisions. It went for about 2 weeks. Head-on collisions where people were dying. That was followed by another few-week period of people in, like I said, hospital and emergencies reporting on the number of deaths due to seemingly silly accidents that shouldn't have even really resulted in an injury, but instead were fatal. So in order to talk about where I think we're at right now, I'd like to go back and share some visions and dreams that actually go back as much as 20 years. And the first one is a recurring dream that was shared with me back in 2016 of driving to the beach. The person was always on their own in their car driving to the beach. And every single time they got there, it was dark. They couldn't see where they were going. They couldn't see what was going on. But they could hear how rough and dangerous the surf was. And they could never actually get down onto the sand itself. And this dream recurred for 15 to 20 years. Until 2016. When this time, it was daytime in the dream. And once again, she knew she was driving to this very same beach. And when she got there, she was able to pull up in the car park. It was beautiful blue skies, the sun was out, the ocean was as calm as a lake, the sand looked very, very welcoming. The whole scene was very welcoming and beautiful. She got out of the car and was just about to step down off the car park onto the sand when what she described as a wizard came and stood next to her and said, "No, stop, not yet, wait." And just as he said that, snakes, thousands or tens of thousands of snakes, came up out of the sand. They came from left and right of her vision, out of the bushes, out of the rocks, out of everywhere. And all started to, very fast, head for a central point on the beach in front of her. And as they started to meet and collide, they were actually eating each other. It was this mass frenzy of snakes eating snakes, until it became a solid block of like a silver stone. And then there was an explosion from underneath them, from under the sand. And it blew this rock apart. But she knew in doing so, it purified it. And what was left at the end of that was just this, scattered all over the beach, was these different sizes of this silvery rock. And then the wizard said to her, "Okay, now it's time, go get your piece." And he picked up his piece. So she went down and picked up one of these pieces, and it was too big. She knew it wasn't for her, and then she picked up a smaller piece. And she noted a few things. One was visually, the imprint of snake skin was actually embedded in the stone. She also knew that it had been completely purified in the explosion, and that to hold on to this piece was actually, it was a remnant, it was a relic, and it was also protection from that energy, and that energy would never happen again. And other people turned up from wherever and all started walking along the beach and also picking up their pieces. And once he saw that everybody was coming to collect their pieces, and he was sure that she had received the message that she was meant to get from that piece, he said, "Okay, bye for now. I'll see you soon." And that dream never happened again. That is the time I believe we are in right now. Today's Saturday, the 18th of May. And yesterday, Friday the 17th, a few things went down that indicated to both her and I that this is the time. And now I also want to go back and share what I said in one of the previous episodes recently that a dream was had that was very indicative of the split. And this was all leading up to the Easter period, which I still wanted to say Christmas, but that's funny. In this dream, everybody was on a train. No one knew where the train was going. There was these mixed feelings and mixed concerns of some people wanting to believe, we're going home, this is it, we're going home, but we could be going to a FEMA camp. We actually don't know where we're going. This is really weird. And then a group of people on the train decided to consciously be positive and to intend that the train was in fact going home. And they all held hands. And if they couldn't physically hold hands, they energetically held hands and just decided to be positive and in their hearts and set that intent. And then what happened was some people on the train started to glow from within. One by one, people started to light up, but not everybody. And then it was as if there were two trains overlaid on top of each other. And they started to separate. And completely separated to the point where there were now two trains on two different tracks. And on one train was all the glowing people. And on the other train was all the not glowing people. But on that train there was also ghost-like figures of some of the people on the glowing train. But the further away they got from each other, some of those ghost-like figures just started to disappear. And the non-glowing train stayed at ground level, stayed on the tracks, and just kept going. The glowing train started to rise up off the tracks and actually head upward towards the sky. And at that point, everybody on that train knew, without a doubt, they were heading home. So based on those two experiences, but they are two of many, just some of the most interesting ones, I believe that's the time we are in. The split has happened. The split between the humans who are heading home and the humans who are too infected to go straight home and need to go to, say, Lilu's Realm 3 for more healing and more time. And also between the humans in general and the bots, the split has happened. And just like that train, the further and further the two trains get away from each other, the crazier things are going to get. The bots right now are being heavily triggered and programmed. Their job is to get us to react, to go into fear, to try and expose our vulnerabilities so they've got a better idea of how to get to us. The heart source beings who are very heavily infected with the virus are also lashing out, becoming unstable and irrational. It's a really crazy time, and I don't see that getting any better. I think that's potentially going to become more and more apparent. The objective for us is to try and stay inside. The words that were given were to stay inside the eye of the hurricane. However, this period should be rather fast and furious. All the snakes are coming out and starting to eat themselves, and we're going to see that not just on the political global scene, but potentially in our own lives. It could become quite vicious in their behaviour. And our job is to stay, again, as centred as possible and to constantly question ourselves. Is my response, am I reacting or am I responding? Am I reacting with a belief Question everything. Always. And I still go through the process of questioning everything I've just told you. And I do that a lot before I get to a point where I feel confident enough to be able to even say what I say. But question everything. Is it a belief? Is it something I've been fed or programmed? Because we actually do need a belief system in order to exist in here. It's what creates the overlay. But the more we can let them go, the more we can just question them and let them go, the less power they have, and the more connected you are to where you really belong. And to add to this, some people have noticed that people they know and love, who they're absolutely sure are in fact heart source beings, and even within the group, being able to measure this to some degree, some of these beings have in fact gone home. And in their place, running their vessels, is the program, the construct, or the virus. I've heard from many people that someone they know and love has just literally changed overnight and become extreme and irrational, illogical, and they don't seem to have, and even to some degree, a memory wipe. And it's unsettling, and it's sad, and it's confusing. But in many of those cases, once looked into energetically, it is that the person, the being, did in fact go home. And now one of the things that are starting to be seen only in the last week or so, since this pocket realm was deleted, when working on people for healings, actually seeing and working with their body at home. Now again, this goes back to visuals of a couple of years ago. We were seeing these big white rooms with lots and lots of beds in them, or pods, as some people would call them, including me from time to time. But there weren't very many of them occupied, they were empty. And just in the last week or so, been able to see into that space again and work with the people directly in those beds, and these rooms are full now. So if you go back several, I think it might have been 59 episodes when I started talking about the merge, I talked about a percentage, and I said that the merge had begun, and up until you get to about 70% merged, you can both function independently here and at home. But once you start to get up to around 70-80%, it gets harder. So we were finding here that we were just having to go down, go to sleep, go meditate, zone out, while home self was being more active. And then home self would literally have to do the same so that we could function here. And now it seems that the merge is at the point where home self can't really function at all and has had to go and get into these beds. And while the complete transfer merge is happening, and it's also a process of upgrading our soul, or updating our soul memories. And some people have really started to activate, come online, wake up very, very quickly, to even at a pace that's even scaring them. And for those who are going with it, staying calm and going with it and sort of really feeling into it, they know it's because time is short and they have to get ready for their job that they've chosen to do next. Everything is pointing to something very, very imminent. So what do we have to look forward to? Well, in the short term, chaos. People and events are just going to become more and more irrational, more and more volatile. The potentially vile and vicious, the lies, it's all just going to get amped up more and more and more. And there are those who are embedded in certain industries, the sort of deep state run industries, who, how can I put this, have had seeds planted and have been activated or are in the process of being activated right now. So deep breaths. You got to try and breathe through this period. But how to help yourself? Look for the anomalies, because the more you see them, the more you'll see them. And just allow them to reaffirm the, artificial nature of this reality. Write down, handwrite what you're feeling, what you're thinking, the things you recognize as programs within yourself. And go, caught that. Write it down. Situations and circumstances and relationships that you want to clean up. Write your intentions down, write it all out, and then burn that piece of paper. It's an incredibly powerful process. And every time you do it, I find you clear, and then the next layer is revealed, and you write that down and burn it, and then that's revealed. And it's just a really powerful clearing process. Remember that your greatest weapon is your heart, your humour, and your unpredictability. Your three greatest weapons. An observation I've made lately, for those of you who've been around long enough, you know I've got a thing with the number 8. Number 8, when it shows up repeatedly, and 818, is a sign for me that there is some looping, some time loops happening, reset attempts and things like that. And over the last couple of months, several times, there's been a spate of 8s, and then it will suddenly shift into 9s, and then we're back to 8s. And then into 9s, and then back to 8s. It's happened twice. And yesterday, went back into the 9s, which I think is interesting timing again. Okay, so I hope at least some of this made sense to you. And again, this is my narrative, my understanding, and the language that I have in order to try and express it. So if you resonate with that, ping with that, whatever, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Now, I have received a lot of questions and messages already in regards to episodes 60 and 61. So I think the best thing and the easiest thing to do would be to do a live stream Q&A next week, just on these 3 episodes. If you'd like to join that, either subscribe and click the alert bell, or keep an eye on the community tab on the YouTube channel, because I'll put an announcement in there. And that'll give me an opportunity to ask some questions, get some clarity, or share your own personal experiences. So hopefully I'll see you then. So bye for now.